They're real. They have discussed what to do about it. Vatican intelligence would really like to discuss it. That's the problem here. We need the governments to reveal these files. The Chinese have done it. The Brazilians have done it. The French did it about a month ago, and it so lit up their switchboard, crashed their net. So I think the people are way ahead of military intelligence.
Studies have been done that, quote, clearly indicate the likelihood of an extraterrestrial explanation. But there are people sitting out there, I'm hoping there are millions of people watching at the moment, who are saying, this is nutty. Why do we even talk about such a thing?
Since they're not attacking us and they've been seen for years, what's the fear? What's the government's fear?
That's an interesting question. I've been working with Paul Hellyer. He's the ex-minister of Defense Canada under Trudeau. He is upset because the Americans are planning the weaponization of space as though they are enemies.
Really?
Yes, and it is very troubling to him. It came out of a project called Project Paperclip, in which, and this is what Eisenhower warned us against, the sustention of the military-industrial complex. In order to extend the power and the funding of the military-industrial complex, you have to be afraid of things. Number one was communism. If that petered out, number two is terrorism. That's here for a while. Number three is asteroids, and number four is extraterrestrials. So there might be a built-in reasoning here to have induced fear just to keep military-industrial complex going.
I'm going to tell you why the United States government is afraid for you to find out what the truth is regarding UFOs.
Some Chinese residents are on edge this morning after another apparent UFO sighting. It's the second one in 2 weeks. The first sighting was on July 7th, and an airport had to be shut down.
All right, that's a UFO if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, can you identify it?
That's undeniable.
The airport had to be shut down after people apparently saw twinkling lights above the airport terminal. 17 flights had to be diverted. The latest sighting happened just 2 days ago, and people say they saw 4 lantern-like objects forming a diamond shape in the air, hovering in the sky for over an hour.
1953, at least 10 more crash disks were recovered, along with 26 dead and 4 live aliens. One of the 4 live aliens died within hours of being removed from the craft. The others died approximately 3 or 4 days later. Of the 10, 4 were found in Arizona, 2 in Texas, 1 in New Mexico, 1 in Louisiana, 1 in Montana, and 1 in South Africa. There were hundreds of sightings. Why were so many craft crashing? Because the government was scared. And when they found out that the radar was downing the craft, they started aiming the radar at the craft with lock-on radar and pumped the juice through. And they brought as many down as they could.
50% of all Americans believe the extraterrestrial explanation accounts for these sightings. Up to as many as 90% of Americans believe the government is outright lying. The polls are unambiguous. Year after year, the same thing. In fact, if you could talk anonymously to people, even in Congress, probably 50% of members of Congress already convinced that the extraterrestrial presence explains this phenomena. Disclosure is at hand. It is very close, and the American people need to prepare themselves very soon for an announcement from our government that there is, in fact, an extraterrestrial presence engaging this planet and the human race.
Why did it stop over one of the most treasured sites in Christianity?
There's a new video this morning that some say may be proof we're not alone in the universe. A UFO in the form of a bright light is seen descending over the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. The video is said to be taken over the weekend. Then suddenly the light shoots up into the sky. There you see it. Another video from a different angle appears to show the light doing the same thing.
The universe. A vast organism of consciousness filled with trillions of galaxies and intelligent life beyond. It is a far-extending mysterious entity which begs to intrigue our curiosity. Are we to believe that it is just us in the universe? Or are there other planets in our galaxy and galaxies beyond that could sustain life for other races to evolve? There have been thousands of reports worldwide regarding the UFO phenomenon. Thousands of historic documents claiming an extraterrestrial presence in the ancient world. Myths and legends of beings coming from the skies or beings living underground. And still, our society continues on ambiguous to these reports, and it is still not fully accepted within our society that we are not alone. Could there be an agenda to suppress this fact with cover-up after cover-up? Is the reality of the phenomenon more than the public can handle? Is it stranger than we can even imagine? Why the ongoing suppression of truth from our governments? It is time to delve further into this phenomenon and time to remove the lid and unmask this extraterrestrial presence.
Listen, I've been involved in this whole thing for 40 years, and I've been deeply involved in it for the last 20. And let me tell you, take it for what it's worth, in my view, there ain't gonna be no disclosure. Not like they expect. They expect the government to someday have a news conference and stand up and say, hey, we got a little surprise for you. Guess what? We've been keeping it from you. We're sorry about that, but it was for your own good, you know. You guys weren't ready for this. You probably couldn't handle it. So, but now we're going to tell you, oh yes, aliens are here. They've been here for quite a while. Oh, they're all over the place. Well, they are indeed all over the damn place. But you're not going to get a government disclosure because that's not how government works. First of all, they're a bunch of nitwits in some cases. They're not capable of giving you a disclosure and doing it in a sensible, thoughtful, caring way. For a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is that they don't want to admit to you they've been lying to you for over 60 years. And then the other thing is that they are really a little bit uncertain and frightened themselves because the true scope of their awareness and what they know still has them in a state of shock. Because they can't come out and tell you what, it's like my analogy of the Pandora's box. You don't open it just a little bit. You just lift the lid just a tiny bit and boom, everything comes out. Well, when everything comes out, it's going to blow the lid off of everything because this is the biggest damn story in human history. And it's simply this: you're not alone and you have never been alone. And you have had, as I have learned over the years, an intimate interrelationship with advanced extraterrestrial intelligence from the beginning of human history. And one of the big secrets is that they don't want to even get close to is that your very existence was initiated and orchestrated by an advanced extraterrestrial intelligence. Now, how the hell are they going to tell you all of that?
Our leaders don't want us to know what's going on. The Russians know, the Chinese know, we don't. That's how it is, folks. They let Russian satellites fly over the most secret bases and take pictures, but if you try to get out to Area 51, watch it.
I'm an annoyance to my superiors, a joke to my peers. They call me Spooky. Spooky Mulder. I'm the key figure in an ongoing government charade. The plot to conceal the truth about the existence of extraterrestrials.
Well, I would say that about does it, Spooky.
I came to believe in the existence of extraterrestrial life and in a conspiracy inside the government to keep their existence secret.
What makes you think this is a conspiracy, that the government's involved?
What makes you think it isn't? A shadow conspiracy within our own government.
Agent Mulder was ready to believe that the body was that of an extraterrestrial biological entity.
You and Mulder are the only ones who can bring it to light.
You don't honestly believe this is some kind of an extraterrestrial?
If it were true, it would be confirmation of the existence of extraterrestrial life. Who are these people?
They only have one policy: deny everything.
The government knows about it, and I gotta know what they're protecting. Nothing else matters to me, and this is as close as I've ever gotten to it. If we fail to anticipate the unforeseen or expect the unexpected in a universe of infinite possibilities, we may find ourselves at the mercy of anyone or anything that cannot be programmed, categorized, or easily referenced.
Now, who are they protecting? And even with our limited resources here in the individual private sector that has been trying to deal with this for all these years, we do know a little bit. We know that since 1947 at least, a power structure within the military intelligence inner sanctum has appropriated the UFO phenomenon, has made it its own sphere, and politics below that level has nothing to do with it. I don't think the president knows any more than you and I do, probably less. No matter who the president is at any given time. And this power structure has attempted to manage the relevant information for its own purposes. First, it wanted to control this information until it could manage it. But that never happened. That's how they said it. It never happened. We'll just control it until we understand it and have a handle on it. So tell the folks it never happened. But later, they found out they couldn't get the handle. They couldn't manage it. But here they were having it covered up and having lied and carried out illegal activities to keep it covered up. So what can you do then when you realize you can't get a handle on it? Well, if it can't be managed, you just simply continue to deny and debunk. And the attitude has been, we can't stop the UFO sightings. Okay, but we can ridicule and frighten the witnesses of these events into silence.
The official space program was boosted by President Kennedy in his inaugural address when he mandated that the United States put a man on the moon before the end of the decade. Although innocent in its conception, this mandate enabled those in charge to funnel vast amounts of money into black projects and conceal the real space program from the American people. A similar program in the Soviet Union served the same purpose. In fact, a joint alien United States and Soviet Union base already existed on the moon at the very moment Kennedy spoke the words. On May 22, 1962, a space probe landed on Mars and confirmed the existence of an environment which could support life. Not long afterward, the construction of a colony on the planet Mars began in earnest. Today, there is a colony which exists on the planet Mars. It is a United States-Russian alien facility.
Now you might ask, what have our authorities and officials in government been doing about this? Well, to begin answering that question, I want you to remember that I want you to realize something. There has been a revolution that's taken place in our government, and here in the cradle of liberty, I feel like we need to call for another one. And I hope by the time we're through here, there will be a revolution of some sort in our action and in our lives and in our thinking about this. But there has been a revolution within our government. So that today, a very great part of the power structure that really deals with our situation globally is unknown to you and me. It's not people we vote for. It's not people we recognize on the street. But it's where the power structure stops at the top. And you'll never see it, and I'll never see it. And I'll say this openly, you could elect my dog president, it wouldn't change that power structure. And we don't know it. We're the ones they're hiding it from. You know what they call us up there among the intelligence community's top levels? We're the sheeple. And that's their term for us. We are the sheeple. Now, this revolution in government activities, we may never know the true extent of these activities because the public is not being told. In fact, most of the evidence that keeps things, most of the effort to keep things covert is not aimed at our so-called political enemies. It's aimed at us, the sheeple. Nowadays, it seems, and I'm going to talk about specific examples of this, that power structure within that high level of military intelligence government activity has decided that they can only gather information, they can't control it. And where do you get the best information about what the aliens are doing? Where do you get it? You get it from satellites? You get it from phone surveillance? You get it from abductees. the first-hand accounts from the people who are facing it one-on-one, and now we have evidence, and I mean really hard evidence, that this power structure's agents are not only doing surveillance on abductees, they are also abducting abductees, interrogating abductees, using drugs and other mind control techniques upon abductees, trying to ask these questions. What do you know about the alien agenda? What are they doing with your family? What have they told you you will be doing? What have they done to put implants in you? What procedures are they carrying out on you? They are asking us questions in a desperate attempt to get the information from us.
The UFO phenomenon is truly a phenomenon of our times. It is an extremely puzzling one and calls forth a wide spectrum of opinions. No matter what one may think about UFOs, no matter what one may believe about them, whether it is all nonsense or whether they represent something very, very real, three facts stand out, three facts which no one can deny. The first is that UFO reports exist. Secondly, that UFO reports come from all over the world. And the third is that many are made by highly responsible people, often scientifically trained. We scientists have no positive proof yet of the origin or even of the reality of these strange reported craft, but we do know that the reports themselves are very real. To find the answer to this magnificent scientific puzzle, the UFO phenomenon, we need to approach it with a truly open mind so we can explore all possible avenues of explanation.
There are 6 distinct categories of sightings. Close encounters of the first kind refers to a mere sighting of an unidentified flying object. Close encounters of the second kind includes both the sighting of a UFO as well as tangible proof of the craft having been there, such as marks on the ground, the scorching of grass, or the interference of electrical circuits. Close encounters of the third kind is the direct confrontation with a space being or entity sometimes called a humanoid. Close encounters of the fourth kind involved alleged abductions by UFOs, where people claim to be involuntarily taken on board a UFO, usually for experimental purposes. Close encounters of the fifth kind involve contactees, or those persons who claim to be in personal contact with UFO entities, usually through metaphysical or occult means. Close encounters of the sixth kind include injuries or deaths resulting from a UFO close encounter.
The odd encounter is one of hundreds of once classified UFO sightings released last month by the British government. It's the sort of disclosure UFO investigators are demanding from the U.S. government.
How would people react? Well, it would be kind of good. It's about time.
Former astronaut Edgar Mitchell is the sixth man to walk on the moon and a firm believer that aliens have visited our planet repeatedly. So I had to ask,
why are they coming in these little glancing visits and we haven't had a more meaningful dialogue or contact or attempt to communicate with these people?
Well, I think we have.
Really?
I think we have, but it is not common knowledge.
Mitchell told me after he returned from the moon, he was briefed at the Pentagon by a high-ranking officer, whose name he would not reveal, who said the U.S. government does have evidence of alien spacecraft and is keeping it a secret.
Well, I think the reason it's still a secret is power and control, controlling whatever technology exists.
I thought it was Akkadian, but it's not. It's Sumerian. I'm sure of it. This is widely considered by my peers to be the holy grail of dead languages. But we haven't deciphered the entire lexicon. Ki ulutim. Our creation is the last two words. I'm not sure of the first two. Ika, ke, a, e, se. Examine is the first word. Ika, zug, zug. The last word is ruin or destroy. Our creation, examine, ruin or destroy.
Ruin, destroy who?
It's an incomplete translation. We can't be sure of exactly what's being said.
But whatever it is, it sounds aggressive.
I'm sorry, but none of this is making any sense.
It's a verbalized recording of the Sumerian language. Now we're talking about the oldest language in human history, for whatever reason, recorded in your room.
What was happening? What was being done to me?
What is unsettling is that, whatever it is, the vocals, they don't sound, ordinary.
Human.
Whoa, stop. Okay, let's not fuel any more of these fires. Now, there's any number of reasons for the distortion in the voice.
Yeah, I'm not jumping to any conclusions, but her voice sounded fine.
The tape could have been recorded over, for one, and part of the old tape could still be heard.
No, I don't recycle tapes.
Maybe this time you did.
And that still does not explain why that voice is speaking a language that predates Egyptian hieroglyphics. Now, I've studied the Sumerian civilization for most of my career, and what I have found is intriguing. You can go into any Sumerian exhibit and see what I'm about to tell you. Drawings of rockets that look like Apollo launching into the sky. Etchings and sculptures of men in spacesuits and what looked like oxygen masks. Now, this artwork was created in the 4th millennium BCE, 4,000 years before Christ walked the earth. Genesis, Noah's Ark, to name a few. Both of these stories existed in Sumer 6,000 years before the Bible was written. Genesis came from the Sumerian epic of creation. Noah's Ark came from the Sumerian deluge. The alien god legend has its basis, its origins in Sumerian history. You can find everything I've described in the museum right now.
Alien abduction reports are something many of us have heard of. But is there anything to substantiate this phenomenon? It may seem as though we are passing from the realm of science into science fiction, but this phenomenon takes a critical view to examine. There are many alien abduction reports relating to one another from all over the world. What is the purpose behind this phenomenon? What races could be involved in this? And more importantly, what could the agenda be? Could there be malevolent and benevolent beings out there serving different purposes for the human race? Let us examine this phenomenon in more detail.
First of all, an abduction can happen to one person or two or three. I've got cases involving 7 people at once. But let's say first a nighttime visitation, which is very typical. Let's say a man and woman are asleep, and the man wakes up. He doesn't know why he's wakened up, and realizes that he's paralyzed and absolutely cannot move. And he is quite terrified, doesn't know what's happening, cannot alert his wife, who seems totally oblivious, sound asleep. We use the term switched off. At some point he becomes aware of a figure in the room, or several figures. Either they approach the bed or they're standing by the window or whatnot. He next finds himself levitating off the bed. He will find himself then floating usually towards the window. Let's say it's a closed window, and he and the small figures float through the closed window. This is not an out-of-body experience. If he looks back to the bed, if he can see back to the bed, he's not in the bed. He's gone. He floats out the window, and there's usually outside some kind of intense light, which functions as some sort of tractor beam or whatever we want to call it, and the person and the figures are floated up into the craft. He floats up into the craft, usually through an opening in the bottom, and finds himself very often immediately on a table without his clothes. Very few people remember the act of either disrobing or being disrobed. He's on a table, and a series of medical procedures, quasi-medical procedures, then are undertaken. They end up very often focusing on the genitals. If it's a male, very often some kind of instrument is placed around the penis. Very often at that point, either painfully or through some kind of induced climax, a sperm sample is taken. Very often, probes are inserted in the nostril or ear. There are a series of other procedures that happen very frequently. Sometimes nerve centers are stimulated and various muscle groups will move. We don't know why any of this happens. The person can be shown some things, very often can be shown a small child or a baby. Even men are shown these strange hybrid offsprings, and then eventually the person is returned the same way he came back to bed, often dropped from a certain height onto the bed, still not disturbing the wife, and immediately goes to sleep. In the morning, wakes up, has no idea what happened. Is this a dream? Very often we'll find his pajamas on the floor next to the bed, doesn't remember having taken them off. Very often he will notice pain or odd sensation in a certain part of his body and finds a small mark. Now, that's a typical kind of nighttime visitation. We have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these cases.
Bud Hopkins has written several books on UFOs, including Missing Time and Intruders. He is one of the foremost experts on abduction cases, otherwise known as close encounters of the fourth kind.
And now we've come to the conclusion that abduction, of their involvement with human beings, that this is the center of the entire UFO phenomenon, and that actually when people have UFO sightings, it's very possible that what they're seeing is something on its way to or from an abduction of somebody. They're not just flying around up there, they are interested very profoundly in human beings.
Whitley Strieber claims to have been abducted by alien beings on more than one occasion and wrote of his experiences in his best-selling book, Communion.
I've had, since I wrote Communion, over 55,000 letters from people around the world who've had this similar things that think they have happened to them, and we still get about 200 a week.
The Intruders Foundation and the Fund for UFO Research show that 1 out of every 50 American adults, 3.7 million people, indicate that they may have had an abduction experience with an unidentified flying object.
Are you an alien?
To you I am, yes.
Are you going to probe us? Why does everyone always assume that? What am I doing? Am I harvesting farts? How much can I learn from an ass?
What? I'm sorry.
What's your name?
It's Graham Willie.
And what's his name?
That's the writer, Clive Gollings.
Okay, cool. I'm Paul.
Paul?
Yeah, it's a nickname that stuck. My ship crashed on a dog. It doesn't matter. Look, if you don't help me, I could die on this road tonight.
Okay.
Okay, perfect, great, okay. Help me grab him. Let's...
This man's peed his pants.
Holy... UFO! UFO!
Oh, dude, stop yelling. You're breaking up. I didn't catch that last part.
Close encounter! Close encounter!
Close encounter? What kind? First? Second?
They're after me!
Third kind already. You better run, man. I think the fourth kind is a butt thing.
Empathy, Sam! Empathy!
They still after you?
Come on!
Dean, you there? What happened? Dean. Nice.
Close encounters of the fourth kind are by far the most frightening. Those who claim to have been abducted by aliens and taken against their will. Perhaps the most famous case was that of Betty and Barney Hill. Their story began on the night of September 19th, 1961, as they were returning to their New Hampshire home from a vacation in Canada. They saw a distant point of light which seemed to move erratically. As it moved closer, it became more intense. Betty Hill remembers.
This craft left the top of the mountain, came out of the highway, and stopped in midair. Barney took the binoculars and started out of the car in an attempt to identify the craft. And as he did this, he saw a group of figures standing in the windows looking down at him. One was saying to him, "Don't be afraid. Keep looking, stay there. Don't be afraid. No harm's going to come to you, but stay there." And the craft started to descend. And Barney ran back to the car, saying we had to get out of there, they were going to capture us. And we took off speeding down the highway.
For 22 and a half years, I served in the United States Army. During my tenure, I was on many occasions asked to serve as the official, unofficial UFO consultant dealing with UFO matters in the areas of my assignment. As a result of my involvement, I was able to ascertain that the United States government knew a whole lot more about UFOs than it was telling the American public. That there was an intelligence involved, that there was a highly evolved technology. I learned that to a degree, we were carrying on a dialogue with this intelligence. We were making every effort we could to acquire this technology and make it part of our own existing technology. We did this, I was told, in the interest of national security. We also had an officially sanctioned deception program. This was in total disregard as to the impact this would have on the individual witnesses and also on their families. This ultimately led to my disillusionment with the program and my involvement in it. I sincerely feel that no government has the right to destroy the lives of the people which it is supposed to serve. While I was in the military and I got to the point where I was no longer interested in trying to be part of the program and actually was going against the program, and I started to be very open and talking about what was going on. This resulted in every effort being made to try to destroy my military career. I was threatened and they even tried to force my military retirement, or I could face possible court-martial. These actions failed, of course, as you know. At one point, I even had an individual come up to me, point a gun at my head, and inform me we could have a training accident, and this would end this foolishness once and for all. I firmly believe that those of us that served in a capacity of the U.S. government in some form or fashion, and who were exposed to the truth, we have a moral obligation to the UFO witnesses, the real victims of the UFO phenomena, to expose once and for all this policy and to reveal the truth, and that is, we are not alone in the universe.
It was told to me years ago, probably a decade ago, that they had developed both zero-point energy and cold fusion. Right. And either one of these, or both, could be used to change the world by getting off fossil fuels in my opinion, as short a period as 10 years. And I have set 10 years as the deadline. I know some scientists who think we've gone past the Rubicon. And I said, well, even if that's true, and I hope it isn't, let's say that we've got 10 years to do something, but we've got to start right away. And we have to mobilize as if it was a mobilization of war for our own survival, which in fact, in many ways it is, you see. So that's exactly the mode that we've got to be in, is get off our chairs and do something, and do it now. And of course, there are some real problems involved. And one of them is the misinformation being put forward by the oil industry, which has lulled a lot of people into thinking that we've got 30 years or 40 years or 50 years, and they're still drilling for oil in the Gulf of Mexico, and they're still making new projects in the oil sands in Canada. And I'm saying, too late for all that. Too late for more offshore drilling, too late for more projects in the oil sands, too late for more huge, noisy windmill farms, all of this stuff. We have to get onto the real technology that is going to make it possible to do this job and do it correctly and do it quickly. So that is the big thing. Well, then the other big thing is we have to change the world banking system.
Absolutely.
And stop letting a few private individuals create all the money as debt, which puts us all so far in debt that we can't afford to do anything, and cut back all over the place, and just to raise enough money to pay the interest on the debt we already have. And so we have to have a real change there. And what I'm going to recommend to or say to the Congress is that I wrote a book in 1999 saying that the next world war would be between the people and the banking system.
Right.
And so now is the time to get at it, because they're mobilizing all their big guns, which are the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the Federal Reserve System, and the Bank for International Settlement. They're getting all ready for their final assault on we the people.
Right.
And a time has come for us to say, hey, enough is enough after 2.5 centuries or whatever of putting us in debt this way and making slaves of us all, that we've got to reverse the tables and print enough money country by country to balance our budgets and get our economies back up to scratch, employ the unemployed people, and then do this tremendous job that has to be done of converting from an oil economy into a clean energy economy.
But especially during the last 2,000 years, there's been a control program that's been operating through religions and through political systems. And at some point in time, and again, thousands of years, but at some point in time, the people who have a large amount of influence in our lives, political people or people with a lot of money, realized that if they were going to control us, they needed to gradually wean us away from being in touch with the spiritual reality.
Absolutely.
Because if you think of it, if you're in touch with your own personal reality and then very much in touch with the spiritual realm, no one can control you. And so there's been a process operating. I wrote a lot about it in my latest book called Catastrophobia, where I'm especially working on the last 2,000 years, because at the current moment we're coming to the end of the age of Pisces, which has been like a 2,000-year age of experiencing religions and learning to move to a more profound level with our emotional bodies. And as we come out of the age of Pisces and as we move into the age of Aquarius, we're learning how to work with energy in a new way, and we're learning how to work with dimensions in a new way. But as we come to this point, and we're here right now, all of the old emotional stuff and all of the programs and all of the control patterns are just hitting us like a ton of bricks. It's literally, I mean, look at the political situation in the United States.
We're in this terrible mess on a planetary level, yet I think most people, and I include myself to a certain extent in this, are still kind of like expecting there to be a technological solution. And we actually have to overcome that and see that solutions like begin with our own sort of intimate connection to the world around us.
What are we to do about this? How do we combat against an intelligence organization that is involved in contact with extraterrestrial entities? How do we unveil the secrecy? We can only gather so much information that is available to the public, but it is ultimately up to all of us to choose what we want to believe. We live in a society that profits from human existence with a mass amount of corruption, lies, and cover-ups coming from our government. We have environmental damage happening to our planet at an accelerating rate. What are we to leave behind for future generations? Why are we living this way, and what is causing this? How much control do we have over our own lives? Are we the creators of our own destinies? Do we choose the reality we want to create? We have to work within a system that is based upon financial profit, which makes it difficult to have complete free will. So what is the reasoning for so much secrecy? Is the end of the rabbit hole more than our third-dimensional perception can comprehend? To unveil the truth about the existence of extraterrestrial life would change human consciousness and would open up many questions about the origins of civilization. It would alter our perception of the universe. We would start using more alternate energy sources that don't pollute our environment. We would no longer be so subservient to a power structure that wants to keep us controlled and in slavery, which is why so much secrecy is kept from all of us.
When the study was concluded in '64, they concluded that there were 4 different groups apparently coming and visiting us. Out of those 4 different groups, one group looked exactly like we do, so much so that they could sit beside you in a restaurant or in an airplane or in a theater, and you'd never know. And that particular point bothered the military guys a lot. The point being that some of these people from somewhere could be walking up and down the corridors of SHAPE headquarters, or they could be walking up and down the corridors of the Pentagon. One day at lunch, a lieutenant colonel made the remark, he says, "Jesus, do you realize they could even be in the White House?" And there was a little forced laughter at that point, I remember, because a lot of us over the years have had some misgivings about the occupants of the White House. But the point I'm making is that the idea that aliens could be here in our midst bothered the military, because if you're not paranoid when you go into the service, you're certainly trained very quickly to be so. It's the nature of the military mind, I think, to be paranoid. But that was only part of the story. The SHAPE conclusions in '64 were that there were 4 groups that we knew of. They were apparently interplanetary. Some very likely were interstellar. They even concluded that some of them could be intergalactic. When I retired in 1976, many of our military people knew at that point that we were not simply dealing with visitations from people from other planets or star systems. They had concluded by '76 that some of these visitors very well might be multidimensional in their source. The evidence that we had collected and the evidence that they had repeatedly demonstrated to us, and that's no accident. It became very clear after a time that there was a program or a process of some kind underway, that they had demonstrated over and over and over again that they apparently were able to manipulate matter and time. Now this really shook up our scientists. There are a lot of new young scientists in particle physics today who talk about multiple dimensions. I'm not enough of a physicist to try to explain to you what a dimension is, but the idea that there could be intelligences from somewhere else, from other dimensions, coming and going into our reality. It's been quite a shakeup in traditional science. I guess I speak out openly and bluntly about this because I feel so strongly about it. I violate my security oath every time I speak about it. I do it intentionally and I do it on purpose because I feel so strongly that the American people not only have a right to know the truth, but they have a need to know the truth. The truth, Don, apparently is simply this, that we're not alone, we've never been alone. We are apparently part of an infinite universe filled with intelligent life. I find that exciting. It doesn't frighten me. The SHAPE study concluded in '64 that if they, whoever they were malevolent or hostile, that they could have taken this planet and cleaned it up and eliminated us, turned us into dog food or whatever, a long, long time ago. That the historical evidence indicates that they've been with us a long time, and I've concluded that we had what I like to call an intimate interrelationship with at least one of those groups, the group that looks exactly like we do. And that point is, I don't like the word alien. I don't think the term alien is appropriate at all here. I like to refer to them as family. We're related to them. I think they had a hand in our being here. And I think the time has come where we're about to meet our extended family. It's going to be very soon, and the people are not ready. And one of the reasons I do speak out so bluntly and so openly is if in some small way I can help people get prepared for this. Because I believe that this reality, once we have accepted it and understood it and gone beyond the fear, will bring about an expansion of consciousness in the human race that will truly help us and prepare us to go out there and take our rightful place in that infinite community of life.
There are a few various extraterrestrial beings that we've examined so far, although there are many. Some races include the Pleiadians from the Pleiades constellation. Contactees of this race include the notorious Billy Meier, Barbara Handclough, and Barbara Marciniak, who claim that this race is here to assist our species and are also our distant relatives. A few other races include the Sirians from the Sirius constellation, Orions from Orion, Draconians from Draco, Arcturians from Arcturus, the Zeta Reticuli race, the Andromedans from the Andromeda galaxy. There are also non-physical, high-dimensional beings that are still not completely understood.
The Pleiadians have now lived for 50,000 years peacefully. That's because they say their government is a lot different than ours. They now let those with the most wisdom rule. Here in Andromeda live a race of people who no longer live in the material body, a race that has evolved to a point of light. The Pleiadians take suggestions from these people and live by that wisdom. You see, in 1975, Mr. Meier began having contacts with extraterrestrial travelers from the star system we call the Pleiades. Now, these contacts are still continuing today. And we've always wondered, are extraterrestrial travelers coming here? And if they did, would they land on the White House lawn? Would they visit you and I? How would it happen? Or has it already happened? Well, it has, and they've been visiting Mr. Meier for many years. And then it began. January 1975, Hinwil, Switzerland. At approximately 6 a.m. in the morning, Edward Albert Meier, better known as Billy, woke up on his farm to get to work as usual. Unbeknown to him, though, in the Pleiades, the system of Taygeta, on a small planet called Ira, a lady named Semyasi was preparing to begin her 7-hour trip to the planet Earth. She'd been preparing for 10 years, studying Billy's mind, his emotions, and working with other people in the Pleiadian race about what to tell us, what to teach us, how to gently awaken us to the fact that we are not alone. As her ship came into our solar system that day, she sent a telepathic message to Billy. Billy received this. He felt the familiar cooling spot on his forehead, paid attention to the message, hopped on his moped, took his camera with him, and rode out to a secluded area in the forest that he was being led to. Now, on that day, this may be similar to what Semyasi saw as she approached Earth to begin a long-awaited and anticipated meeting with Billy Meier. She'd even learned his language to have these meetings.
The most popular in appearance are generally called the Tall Whites, the Nordics, which both appear more humanoid, and then the classic gray alien and reptilian beings. There are also the Sumerian gods, such as the Anunnaki, who according to the ancient Sumerian texts, like the Enuma Elish, claim to have a hand in genetically manipulating our species. Parts of the Bible, such as Genesis, mirror the Epic of Creation texts discovered in Iraq. In the Bible, this race is called the Nephilim, meaning those who from heaven to earth came.
What's your problem? I said, what's your problem?
How are you today, sir?
Okay, how's it going?
Fine, thank you. Thank you, sir. Here you are, sir. Thank you. Hey, buddy. You gonna pay for that or what? Look, buddy, I don't want no hassle today. Either pay for it or put it back.
Somewhere down the line we've been lied to and we've been cheated. What we have to do is we have to literally ask for the truth. If we cannot ask for the truth, we must demand the truth. We must take it before courts of law and common law systems, and we must demand it. If we cannot do this, our founding fathers told us the only thing left is to overthrow, to get the parasites out. I don't advocate overthrow, but it does look like this may be the only alternative.
I am convinced, based on my research and the individuals whom I've had contact in the U.S. intelligence community, that the U.S. government does indeed have craft that meet the description of many of the UFO reports.
I was paid by the Department of Naval Intelligence, and what they're doing, researching extraterrestrial craft, is beyond me, but that's where my checks came from, so I can only assume that they were in charge of that. Supposedly, the information, now this isn't something that I determined, it's something I was told, that the crafts originated from a planet that orbited the Zeta Reticuli star system. Zeta Reticuli 1 and Zeta Reticuli 2 are two stars of a binary star system. The craft allegedly came from there. One or two autopsy photographs I saw dealt with just a small photograph, a bust shot essentially, just head, shoulders, and chest of an alien with a chest was cut open in T fashion and one single organ was removed. the organ itself in the other picture was cut and vivisected, essentially. Showing the different chambers in there. This was totally unrelated to anything I was doing, but from that photograph, it looked like what you see in UFO lore as the typical gray. So how tall it was from what I could see, I couldn't tell, because I only saw a portion of the photograph, but if everything else you see is correct, I would imagine it was 3.5 or 4 feet tall. But there again, you know, all I had to see was a photograph, and you know, I didn't have much to go on. Allegedly, this interaction has occurred since, you know, man was a simian creature, and you know, there were genetic alterations made.
The mere fact that it's humanoid is extraordinary. It's indicating a convergent evolution, or perhaps a common ancestry, and the implications of that are staggering. I mean, where did it come from? This could completely change the way that the world views itself. You imagine the way that the public will react to this? But I know that that won't happen. I do.
Like yourself, Doctor, I'm a seeker of truth. But the people who pay for facilities like this have other priorities and the power to enforce them.
So I keep it a secret.
People like us have to work within the system, Doctor. We do the best we can.
In 1947, President Truman established a group of the top military scientific personnel of their time. They were known as MJ-12 or Majestic 12. This group exists today, but none of the original members are still alive. In the years between 1969 and 1971, MJ-12, representing the US government, made a deal with extraterrestrial biological entities, or the race known as the Greys. The deal was that in exchange for extraterrestrial technology, the US government was to ignore the abductions that were going on and suppress information about the cattle mutilations. The Greys assured MJ-12 that the abductions were merely the ongoing monitoring of developing civilization. Later, it would be discovered that this was not actually the case. The US government at the time was not initially aware of the far-reaching consequences of their deal. They were led to believe that the abductions were essentially benign, and since they figured that the abductions were probably going to go on anyway, whether they agreed to the deal or not, they only insisted that a list of abductees be submitted to MJ-12 on a periodic basis.
The supposed members of this elite panel were 12 of the most trusted and brilliant men from the military, scientific, and intelligence communities. Friedman believes that Truman and his close advisors selected them, and the 12 men had the highest security clearance. It is an impressive group. The Secretary of Defense, the first 3 directors of the CIA, an Air Force general who would later become head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Secretary of the Army, and 5 of the nation's leading scientists at the time.
One characteristic was clear. They all had worked on very high security stuff.
Friedman is immediately intrigued by one name that appears on the list.
Here's Donald Howard Menzel, who'd written 3 anti-UFO books. Explained away every sighting, and yet he was supposedly on the inside.
First of all, the objects are not unidentified. We know what they are. Second, in many cases, in most cases, they're not flying. And finally, in many cases, they are not even material objects.
Dr. Donald Menzel, a Harvard astronomy professor who died in 1976, had earned a reputation as a determined debunker of UFOs. And yet, if the documents are correct, he also served on a top-secret committee charged with covering up evidence of extraterrestrial crafts.
By secret executive memorandum, NSC 5410, Eisenhower had preceded NSC 5412/1 in 1954 to establish a permanent committee, not ad hoc, to be known as Majority 12, MJ12, to oversee and conduct all covert activities concerned with the alien question. NSC 5412/1 was created to explain the purpose of these meetings when Congress and the press became curious as to why such important and prominent men were meeting on a regular basis. Majority 12 was made up of Nelson Rockefeller, the Director of Central Intelligence Alan Welsh Dulles, the Secretary of State John Foster Dulles, the Secretary of Defense Charles E. Wilson, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Admiral Arthur W. Radford, and that's why the Navy got everything, because the first Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff who served on MJ-12 was Navy. If it had been an Army general, the Army would have had it. The Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, J. Edgar Hoover, and that should answer a lot of questions for you, and 6 men from the Executive Committee of the Council on Foreign Relations, known as the Wise Men. These men were all members of a secret society of scholars that called themselves the Jason Society. Are the Jason Scholars, who recruited their members from the Skull and Bones and the Scroll and Key societies of Harvard and Yale. And that was stated verbatim in Operation Majority. The Wise Men were key members of the Council on Foreign Relations. There were 12 members, including the first 6 from government positions, thus Majority 12. This group was made up over the years of the top officers and directors of the Council on Foreign Relations and later the Trilateral Commission. Gordon Dean, George Bush, and Zbigniew Brzezinski were among them. The most important, however, and influential of the Wise Men who served on MJ-12 were John McCloy, Robert Lovett, Averill Harriman, Charles Bolin, George Kennan, and Dean Acheson. Their policies were to last well into the decade of the 70s, and it is significant that President Eisenhower, as well as the first 6 MJ-12 members from the government, were also members of the Council on Foreign Relations.
March 1994. In Washington, D.C., a congressional inquiry explores government records of a crash near Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. Some UFO researchers hope that the inquiry will unearth evidence of a cover-up of a crash of an alien spacecraft. A cover-up which they believe is spearheaded by a secret government council called the MJ-12. The General Accounting Office, the investigative arm of Congress, handles the fact-finding mission. It audits the FBI, CIA, Air Force, and other agencies for records of the so-called Roswell incident.
The pro-Roswell people, if you will, have for years said it was the Air Force that had, quote, covered this whole incident up.
It was a wonderful trip over here. We took the helicopter. We had landed in Roswell. I announced to people when I landed that I had come in peace. Let me tell you, there are more 9- and 10-year-old boys around the country. When I meet them, they ask me, have you been to Roswell? And is it true what they say? And I tell them, if I told you, I'd have to kill you. So, and their eyes get all big, you know, so we're going to keep our secrets here.
If the Majestic 12 documents are to be believed, the cover-up was a success. But UFO researchers claim the government still needed to contain speculation that something extraordinary happened near Roswell, that aliens had pierced some of the nation's most sensitive airspace. They believe President Harry Truman authorizes a strategy to quell any remaining suspicions.
Let's face it, if the United States government recovered crashed flying saucers in New Mexico, you would want to cover it all up.
The Majestic 12 documents indicate that on September 24th, 1947, President Truman signed an executive order initiating the covert operation. But there is no record of any MJ-12 meeting, only those documents that surface in 1984. One, the so-called Truman Forrestal Memo, suggests that Truman authorized the top-secret project. Allegedly, the 12 members took responsibility for a cover-up begun by the Army. Then there's the so-called Eisenhower briefing document, which indicates that the members of MJ-12 were tasked with investigating and exploiting the alien technology recovered from the crash site near Roswell. Exactly, UFO researchers say, the approach officials might be expected to take.
The government, first of all, would want to know, are these guys hostile? Secondly, they wanted to know, how do these things work? If you got wreckage, you want to figure out, what can I learn from this?
What do you think one would do if you had access suddenly to something as exotic as alien technology? You would establish a super secret group of individuals with the right types of scientific and security clearances, and you would say, I assume, figure this out.
Friedman contends that President Truman and the MJ-12 members were aware of the gravity of the situation. The Roswell crash meant that control over some of the most sensitive airspace in the U.S. had been compromised.
Some of the most classified places in the United States, which are in New Mexico, White Sands Missile Range, the 509th in Roswell was the most elite military group in the world. They dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
A lot of the public has heard rumors of secret government underground facilities such as Area 51, S4, or the Dulce base. But how many of these facilities could there be? And what could be taking place at these bases that is so secretive? Could there be joint alien and human military facilities where secret experiments are conducted? Are MJ-12 members working directly with extraterrestrial biological entities to progress the Illuminati agenda for a new world order?
The base is underneath Archuleta Mesa. Supposedly it consists of 7 levels, each level increasing in security as you go lower and lower. The information that was provided to us by Thomas Costello gave us very complex floor plans that had been drawn out. Here we're looking at the first level of Dulce. The central hub here is security, which extends all the way down. It's the hub of these concentric ring circles. Each area is connected by corridors and passageways. Level 2, they strip you down and take all your personal clothing, they weigh your body, they take biometric scans of you and everything. So in case you're trying to smuggle something out, they know exactly what you ate, they know exactly how much you should weigh, they know if you have something in your stomach.
They're really taking it to extremes.
Well, you would have to with something like this. They're frightened that it would be discovered that humans were being experimented on for genetic research. Well, level 3, we have the computer bank area. This is where they contain all command, control, communications, and intelligence.
Level 3 doesn't sound very dark. When does it all start?
Well, it starts getting more interesting at level 4. Here's where they get some of the more exotic research. They've studied the human aura, all aspects of telepathy, hypnosis, dreams.
Guys, wait, hang on a second. Wait, are you talking about extraterrestrial visitors that are working with our government?
Both. They call level 6 Nightmare Hall. You have aliens experimenting on humans, humans experimenting on aliens. They feel that you can sacrifice the one for the many. There's nobody safe. This is where all the genetic experimentation is occurring, where they fuse animals and humans together.
John Lear showed me his drawings of the Costello photographs in which there were body parts in vats of morphed human beings in cages.
About 2 or 3 years ago, a mouse with a human ear growing out of its back. Do you remember seeing that?
I saw that.
Remember, the military-industrial corporate complex is actually about 30 to 40 years ahead of us. So that means that at the time when these came out, chances are they were successfully fusing humans and other animals together as a precursor to what we're seeing now. The human test subjects are housed in level 5, they're taken in, the experiments are done on level 6, then they're transported to level 7. This is the horrific area. Guards, like Thomas said, that they had the cages. They were told not to talk to anybody. These were half men, half other animals.
Who's doing these experiments?
Reptilian humanoid beings, the small grays.
I'm off to Las Vegas to talk to John Lear about the mysteries of the Dulce Papers and their ultimate origin. Can you just start us off and tell us how this whole story began?
I met Ann West. She told me that she knew a security officer there. His name was Thomas Costello. Supposedly he escaped with 7 minutes of videotape, 25 black and white photos, and about 100 pages of information on what was going on there. He contacted Ann, who was a longtime friend of his, and said, what I want you to do is bury this information. I'll contact you every 4 months. If I miss 2 meetings in a row, then I want you to take that information and expose what's going on there. When she was shown the photos before he put it in the box, he asked her to make some drawings. And these are the original pencil drawings that she made.
What is there at Dulce from these drawings?
What's underground has 7 levels. There's all kinds of experiments going on. Womb submerged in sort of yellow liquid, looks thicker than water. Dozens of creatures in each womb. Can't count the tanks. 3 fingers, 2 toes, not human.
All we do know, or at least believe from the photographs, is that there's experimentation with human beings.
Correct.
There are aliens who are living at Dulce.
Correct.
And we are working with the aliens at Dulce.
Correct.
I was involved in building another base inside of Dulce, New Mexico, which is Los Alamos Laboratory. It's a biological laboratory. On the southwest part of the Archuleta Mesa, we built an underground facility, a better part of 3 cubic miles hollowed out underground. Then to the southwest of that, we were in the process of the early stages of building. We drilled 4 large tunnel-like holes. Some of them ran 2.5 miles under surface. Number of the original wells or drilling machines that were used were at the rate of 2 miles a day. It was fairly rapid. The equipment kept coming up broken. So we wanted to go down and we wanted to send somebody down there, a human observer, or human observers in this case, to find out what was going on. Well, to our total surprise, first of all, the government knew all about it. They didn't tell anybody. When I saw Green Beret and Black Beret people encamped inside of our geologist camp, I knew something was up. The gig was up. First of all, I knew all about the alien agenda. I'll explain that in a few minutes. The large alien grays had been encamped there for as best as believed possible about 400 or 500 years. It had been one of their internal bases. And we drilled holes right on top of it. All the stinking air, all the black sooty air came right out as soon as the first hole was sunk, and all this soot came up, and well, that's when all the hell broke loose, really, all started. Anyway, after we drilled all 4 holes, it took about 2 days to drill all 4 of them. And when you build an underground base, you drill 4 basic holes, and you build called stopes or cross-member holes across, and you use blasting equipment, special blasting equipment by the analyzation of the rock formation, and you literally blast out or tunnel out or deflagrate or melt rock out to build the large rooms that are required for this underground base. Well, in this process, I was lowered down the basket of one of these holes, and about from me to this elderly woman here in the front was sitting a 7-foot-tall alien gray. The stench was worse than the worst garbage can you can imagine. The person the entity was absolutely horrible. I didn't waste any time. I reached for my pistol. At that time, as an engineer, I didn't have time to carry all the folderol of one of these big submachine guns that all the sea spray and the yellow fruit and all the outer perimeter and inner perimeter security people carried. I carried a little Walther PPK pistol with a 9-shot clip. This is in late August of 1979. Now, You got a regular suit of clothes, you got a regular clothes on, plus you're in a almost like a spacesuit environment, and you're reaching for a gun. It's not the easiest thing to do, and then to pop a clip in it and start shooting. And I killed 2 of them. Yes, they're mortal and they do die. However, in the process, one of them did this. All I remember is that he just kind of waved his hand in front of his chest, and the next thing I know, this blue beam hit me and just literally opened me up like a fish, and burnt my fingers right off of me. And it was some form of electrical force, because the kind of like being hit by a lightning bolt burned all my toenails off of me. Completely crispy crittered my left foot. Burnt the shoe right off of me. All I remember is the smoking remains, and I'm still conscious, but in and out of, I didn't remember much. And there was a Green Beret that was right behind me that risked his life. In fact, he died. But he risked his life. He shoved me back in the basket and hit the button and took me up. And I wouldn't be alive talking to you today if it wasn't for him. I'm forever indebted. He lost his life. 66 Secret Service agents, Green Berets, Black Berets, crack troops lost their lives because the government, our United States government, lied, did not tell us anything about the alien threat. There's a war underneath there, and I'm talking dead serious. It's been going on since that time. Since late August of 1979, our military, the Russian military, basically the militaries of the world, have been in constant conflict with the outer space alien. The small gray, the large gray, the reptilians, the whole thing. There are 11 distinct races of aliens. 2 are benevolent. 1 had to leave here in a hurry because their world is under attack, both on the surface as well as underground there, the Pleiadians.
Again, this is a story that was relayed to me, and allegedly what happened in '79, there was some sort of information exchange going on where there were actual live aliens at the facility, and at one particular point there was an area where some security personnel went to enter, and apparently because not the sidearms but the bullets in the sidearms, from what I understand, if they would have entered the area, the bullets would have detonated. And supposedly one of the creatures tried to stop the security personnel from entering the area, and a fight ensued. And the bottom line from the altercation was that the security personnel, I don't remember how many were involved, but were all killed, and they died of head wounds, and that's all that I heard of that story. There were 22 people with Majestic clearance. I had Majestic clearance. Majestic clearance was designated as clearance 38 levels above Q clearance, and Q clearance is the civilian top secret clearance. It probably really hit me when I got inside the craft and looked around and began to understand how the craft was operated, and finally grasped the whole project as a whole, as what we were doing, the fact that we weren't building this thing, we were trying to find out how it was made. We were back engineering it. Normally the bus pulled around to the opposite end of the facility, which was the main entrance, and that's where we went in. On this particular occasion, it pulled up to one of the hangar doors, which were normally closed, and the last one was open. We came out, and I saw the disc in the hangar. Upon seeing it, it struck me that, well, this explains all the UFO sightings. Not thinking that it was an extraterrestrial craft, that this must have been some advanced form of fighter that we've been working on for years, and people have just caught it being tested, so on and so forth. And it never even occurred to me, even though I was looking at an extraterrestrial vehicle, that this wasn't man-made. People have asserted that, boy, that must have been the most exciting time in your life, and that's not the way it was. When I first got to look inside the craft, all I can say, it's an ominous feeling. You walk in there, and It feels as if you shouldn't be there. I know that sounds kind of corny, but it's a real ominous feeling. It's not an exciting feeling. It brings up a whole lot of questions in your mind. Well, where did this come from? And you know that they won't give you the answers to the whole story, but it's that's the only way I can describe it.
The abduction agenda held that extraterrestrial entities, that is, beings from some other planet, were visiting Earth on a mission. All right? This mission involved efforts to regenerate their species. And to do so, they needed reproductive material from humans. That was the picture that pretty much emerged from the research by the late 1980s. Now, this scenario explains several things. It had a lot going for it. For one thing, it explained why these beings were taking sperm and ova and fetal implants from people. Right? All right? It also maybe explained why there was an interest in the genetics that ran many generations of one family. Could explain that. And it could maybe explain why these little gray aliens coming into everybody's bedrooms and cars and places to take them look so feeble and sexless and emotionless and degenerate. Degenerate in the physical term. Why, sure, they're on the downside of their evolution. They're de-evolving. They need new blood. They need new DNA. That's why they're here. Problem solved. Right? Well, there were some problems with this little scenario. So there were still some questions this scenario did not answer. All right, so it was forced by the sheer weight of the reports coming in from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people around this planet. It was forced to expand. They said, okay, maybe we didn't understand it altogether, right? Maybe we just had part of it and now we're going to get the rest of it. And what they were forced to face was that this agenda is far more complex than merely a degenerating alien race trying to upgrade their species, because it didn't explain what was going on in bedrooms and cars and homes around this planet night after night. Hopkins and Jacobs and others who had held to this crossbreeding scenario as a firmly fixed, limited agenda had to start expanding what they were saying. And soon they were postulating that the aliens were also studying human emotions. And they were also studying, maybe, well, it appears they're studying human sexuality. And by golly, it looks like they're studying human pleasure and pain responses as well, from what the abductees are telling us is going on. And what do these things have to do with crossbreeding? Why do you subject a person to excruciating pain to measure a response in order to crossbreed? Why do you do sexual molestation to a 5-year-old to crossbreed? Why are these things happening, and what do they have to do with this agenda we felt real confident that we had understood? People were being subjected to terrifying situations, excruciatingly painful procedures, traumatic sexual encounters over which they had no control and for which no acceptable explanation has yet to be given.
Back in 1954, I'll give you a quick overview. There was the created 1954 treaty where Eisenhower signed a pact with the known alien species of the time. There were 3 at the time. And said that we're going to deal in high technology, but you can take a few head of cattle and a few human beings and you can experiment on them. It's unthinkable. Now, the created 1954 treaty had been violated. After the great firefight, the alien-human war, I am the only living survivor talking about it worldwide at all. The only one. The other 2 are in nursing homes in Canada, and the Canadian government refuses to allow any U.S. people including myself, to talk to them because they are afraid of kidnapping. Probably the reason I got shot to pieces in 11 attempts on my life is I am a direct threat to the entire system. The New World Order, the alien agenda is one and the same. It's world takeover and the decimation of the population of this planet. Now, I'm going to tell you something a little bit different about the alien species. The bad news ones, there are 9 races of alien populations. To look at a human being as a bag of food. They're not cannibals. They don't eat the flesh and the bones and all that kind of stuff. They use the glandular secretions of animals and human beings as a mixture of the vitamins for their food. They get high off of our adrenal gland substances called adrenal chrome.
The Greys apparently have a genetic disorder in that their digestive system is atrophied and not functional. In order to sustain themselves, they use enzyme or hormonal secretions obtained from the tissues that they extract from humans and animals, which is the case with many of the cattle mutilations. The secretions obtained are then mixed with hydrogen peroxide to kill germs. Then it is applied to the skin by spreading or dipping parts of their bodies in the solution. Their bodies absorb this solution, then excrete the waste back through the skin. Urine is also excreted through the skin in this manner, which explains the stench that many abductees or witnesses have reported during encounters with the Greys. Supposedly, the Greys have taken over several top-secret underground military facilities, and certain branches of government are working hand-in-hand with these entities to bring about total domination of the world, while a second group of ETs are here to protect us, such as the Pleiadians. In 1989, it was estimated that 20 million Greys are actively operating under the surface of the Earth, within bases or underground cave systems.
I'm going to casually mention to you something that's very scary indeed. And tell you what the alien agenda is. And it's going to sound very familiar. The alien agenda is the complete takeover of this planet, the killing off of 5, 6 to 7/8 of the world's population by the year 2029. U.S. military has known about this for 45 years. They've told no one. As far as I know, I'm the only person standing before a crowd talking about the alien agenda, secretively.
All of our super secret aircraft have been developed and test flown out in this particular area. So it only makes sense that if you have something as sophisticated as a flying saucer and the related technology to that, that would certainly be one of the prime locations you'd want to go.
What you see is an ordinary looking Air Force base. It's nothing to write home about, but because the government won't talk about it, everyone wants to see it. The military has never said there are no UFOs. It's never directly denied any of the Area 51 stories. It would have been so simple when these claims came out, these Papoose Lake claims, for the military to simply say, look, we have nothing there. They could take a few reporters to this area and show them, nothing there. The military hasn't done it. The military has stonewalled it, has remained silent. And that's the most damning thing that they can do.
Area 51 to this day is not acknowledged. That is to say, the Air Force does not admit that it exists. This status has been maintained very carefully, particularly in the last few years. The puzzle is that the base has clearly been very active for quite a while, and you can see that there are about 700 to 1,000 people traveling from Las Vegas every day. So essentially the bulk of what has gone on there in the last 10 years has not emerged from the black.
This airplane the program was terminated. The airplanes were put in mothballs for 20 years before they admitted the existence of the aircraft. There's programs that they're working on today that are 50 years ahead of anything that you and I could even conceive of, and that we may never see the light of day.
Would you say it's America's most top secret military base?
As far as an operational test facility, it's probably the most secret test facility in the free world. Yes.
I think one of the things that impressed me the most about what the contractors would share with us is that they were in the tunnel building business, and they were digging tunnels all over the damn place, and they had these big 40-foot tunnel boring machines, you know, on railroad tracks. They'd go into the side of a mountain, literally, and they would go down and then out. And they were laughing one time. They said they were digging a tunnel and they ran into another tunnel, which they didn't know about.
Really?
And they said the tunnel they ran into was better than the one they were building. And all our ears perked up. And I said, yeah, what? He says, this thing was beautiful. He says, it was big and it was smooth and the walls were like glass. And he says, we built this damn thing. The ones we were building were, rough and not too ready, and we had to plaster them and, finish them up a bit with cement and all to make them livable. But he says, we ran into a series of tunnels that were incredible. And what we were going to do is we were going to get a Jeep and load it up with, spotlights and water and whatever, and we were going to explore. And one of our senior supervisors, he said, found out about our plan and threatened to court-martial or put us all in jail. And he said, you stay the hell out of those tunnels. Those are not ours. Those are not for you to look at. You leave them alone. And he said, all among themselves, who the hell built those tunnels, Well, who had the technology to build those that good? Technologically, they are so far beyond this that we can't even imagine it. And I think spiritually they are so far beyond us. And I think those are the ones that are really calling the shots. I think those are the ones that are really in charge of the program. And you see other aliens, you see little grays, you see tall grays, you see tall whites with no hair at all. You even see, some of the people have described seeing reptilians. I don't deny that. I don't doubt that for a moment. But I've concluded that the one group that seems to be running the program, at least on planet Earth, are the Anunnaki from Nibiru, our cousins, our forefathers, as it were.
So it's possible that they had built those tunnels?
I think so. They said that there were tunnels all over the damn place. There were tunnels going from Groom Lake to Nellis, which is about 10 miles, 20 miles, something like that. There were rumors that some of the tunnels went over to Fort Huachuca, which is in southern Arizona.
And you had been stationed there at one time?
And I had been stationed at Huachuca. And I knew there were some, mysterious goings on there, but anyhow, they said that there were tunnels all over the place. So when I hear these rumors about tunnels across the continent with high-speed rail, yeah, I'm not surprised.
So the Phil Schneider reports about underground tunnels and some of the maps that he provided, that kind of thing, do you guys have problems with that?
It makes sense to me.
Okay, so the Andromedans tell you that the Alpha Draconians are here now. Where?
There are 1,833 of them that have been living underground between 100 and 200 miles beneath the surface. They've been here, some of them have been here a long, long time. They have lifespans that are thousands of years. They're carnivorous. They are not friendly to mankind, at least the ones that are here.
Are you saying carnivorous, they eat humans?
Yes. And they won't eat a dead human. It has to be alive at the time of the killing. Their preference is children. And we've been told, you shouldn't talk about that. There are other people say, well, you better not talk about the reptilians. Well, bull. Why not? According to the Andromedans, they're responsible for 31,712 children disappearing in the last 25 years from the United States. These children were food.
How are they able to do it? How are they able to come up out of this from underground and do it, or do they have?
There are tunneling
agents
systems
working?
everywhere. They're being helped by the Greys, and also there are groups within the higher echelon that are actually helping them acquire this.
So human beings are abducting the kids and giving them to the Greys, who in turn give them to the Alpha Draconans?
That's right. That's part of the deal. They won't come up as long as we feed them down there. You understand? It's about human beings selling themselves out. The echelon attitude here, the needs of the few outweigh the needs of humanity. And sorry, that just isn't right. You know, but it's going to have to be humanity that's going to rise up and take the stand. You're just going to have to turn off your televisions. They're going to have to get in their car. They're going to have to fire everybody in Washington, D.C. that knows and does nothing. And they're going to have to do something. You know, this apathy's got to end. Otherwise, the way we live is going to end. Period. I mean, that's the bottom line. You know, and I'm not coming from a fear space. I'm really quite angry about the apathy and the fact that, you know, when people give lectures and try to tell this, people want to stand up and fight with them. Look at what's happening around us. The indications are everywhere. Everywhere. The truth is now an obscure thing. You know, the lie is the norm. There's something wrong here. What's wrong with this picture?
There was a very, very tight security blanket screwed down tight over all of the alien question. The downed craft, the fact that they were here, the technology that we were recovering. Some craft, strangely enough, were not damaged at all. But we could not recognize anything that we had previously known as mechanical, electrical, hydraulic, or any other thing that we knew of, except eventually we discovered that the craft contained a small reactor approximately the size of a large football or a small basketball, which was said to be a clean reactor, and the craft, this particular craft, used or seemed to use water as fuel. Now, how that all works, I don't know. I am not a nuclear physicist.
They would call it a specific time. For instance, the operator would say, Mr. Lazar, it's now 4:15 a.m. We expect you to be at McCarran Airport at 4:45. Your plane will be leaving at such and such time. I'd drive there, check in, board the plane, and the plane would fly out to Groom Lake. It would land there. I'd get off the plane and wait, and there would be a bus to take me and whoever else is going to S4, Papoose Lake, which is about 15 miles south of there, and then I would check in at S4.
Tell me about how you felt on your very first trip out.
The first trip out there was actually very exciting because it seemed so cloak and dagger to me, especially after I got in the bus with the blacked out windows. I kind of thought that was neat. Drove out to the site, and then it was checked in, guards walking around with guns, and I was sure what I was working on was going to be pretty fascinating.
The first thing that happens when you walk in this facility, you enter that door, what you see is this long hallway here, very long hallway. It has the same type line configuration or stripes on the floor. To the left, you'll see a red line. You cannot go to the left. On the right, there's a blue line. You can get access to that. So we're walking up here. The first room to the left, ladies and gentlemen, is actually the avionics lab. Just beyond that is the propulsion systems lab. Over here we have a files department, and we have something called the briefing room. This is a very important room, the briefing room. Why? Because there's something called King Tut's, or training update tapes, and they have something called blue 3-ring DTIC binders, which is Defense Technical and Information Center binders. So I just submit, we've all heard this thing about Carl Sagan stating that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Well, here's where the evidence is. In this facility, they not only have the hardware, but they've got the tissue samples, they've got the motion picture film reels, they've got the high visual digital audio tapes. It's all here. This is what we're looking for. So, on the far western wall, on the interior of each of the 9 hangar bays, there is a 4-1 in red paint circled by a red circle. So that indicates that you are at Area S4, Floor 1. That's the significance there. The first hangar bay, which is right here, this is hangar bay number 1, was none other than Bob Lazar's sport model, or a P-45 sport model. Hangar bay number 2, we believe to be the exact same vehicle, or possibly an ARV, alien reproduction vehicle. Hangar bay 3, ladies and gentlemen, was the Roswell craft, which was covered by a tarp, so Dan didn't get to see the entire configuration, but it was the Roswell craft. Next we have, in the next hangar, which is number 4, is the P-52 Orion craft. The next hangar bay 5 was empty. Hangar bay 6 contained a man-made F-22 conversion, or sort of a dog and pony show of what was in hangar bay 3. So it was a man-made version of the Roswell craft. Up here we have, it's believed to be the 1953 crash retrieval in Kingman, Arizona. That was what was in the next hangar, which is 7. Hangar bay 8 contained a black isosceles triangle that was nicknamed the licorice drop.
Many people who have exposed this enigma have sacrificed their comfort, their social and economic welfare, and in some cases, their very lives, such as Carla Turner, William Cooper, Phil Schneider, just to name a few. They expose this information to those who value truth and freedom. Whether we accept this information and believe it is up to all of us to judge. Knowing is half the battle, and what we do with information in our actions is up to us to decide.
You have whole organizations which investigate our beam ships, but they have little material that is really authentic. However, the authorities already know much about our existence, but they continue to deny the fact of our existence, or even the fact of their research. They want only to rule the cosmos, but are not able to create on Earth peace among themselves.
The Pleiadians want us to know we have a very unique planet, an abundance of life. We benefit from having so many extraterrestrial ancestors in the past. 22 million years ago, the ancient Lyrians came here, and when they did, they brought with them some of their culture and, of course, some of their plant and animal life. In the last 389,000 years, we've been visited by many different civilizations throughout our galaxy. Some of them have stayed for a short period of time, others have lived here for a while. They've brought with them wonders from their world, and they've taken back many wonderful things from ours. You see, the important thing is for us to understand that we're not only not living alone in the universe, but we're sharing a planet with a lot of other wonderful life forms. You are a spiritual being going through a series of material lives on purpose to gather information to feed your spirit and grow. And you're sharing this world with a lot of other life forms doing the same thing in their own way. See, animals evolve, plants evolve, and of course the planet itself evolves. We have to live in harmony with all of these different life forms. In our galaxy alone, there are over 44 million planets that naturally evolved the human form on its own. In the trillions of years of its life, at the moment there are 7.5 billion planets that have human life, and over 340 different shapes of the human form, different sizes, shapes, and colors, and so forth. But what about the Pleiadian planets? The Pleiadians are descendants of the Lyrians, and they tell us about a third of us have their genetics in them. Well, Semjase says that on their planets, by the way, they live in a solar system, and their sun is called Teget. There's 10 planets in their system. They live on 4 of them. Their main planet is called Ira. It's just 10% smaller than Earth. The atmosphere is very similar. And matter of fact, they find Switzerland very comfortable. It's very similar to their home world. You see, there is a large family of man out there, and it's time for us to become aware we're about to join them.